That word does not mean wife, sir. It means blood. The poor black girl's voice was barely louder than the rain tapping the mansion windows, but it cut through the Whitmore library like a blade. Nathaniel Whitmore looked up from the 200-year-old trust deed, his fountain pen still hovering above the signature line. The family lawyer's finger froze over the faded Latin. Behind him, Nathaniel's fiancée stopped smiling. No one had asked the child to speak. Earlier that evening, before anyone in that room knew Maya Brooks's name, the Whitmore mansion smelled of old leather, polished walnut, and a perfume too sweet for a house built on grief. The scent followed Vivian Cross as she moved beside Nathaniel's chair, one hand resting lightly near his shoulder, the diamond on her finger catching the firelight each time she turned. On the table lay the deed, sealed under glass, its parchment yellowed with age, its red wax seal cracked like dried blood. Beside it were white gloves, a silver magnifying glass, a stack of legal folders, and a revised agreement that Graham Ellison had placed directly in front of Nathaniel, angled so the signature line faced him like an invitation. Nathaniel had signed billion-dollar mergers without blinking. He had closed companies, opened foundations, bought buildings that touched the clouds, and walked through hospital wings bearing his family name without once feeling small. But this room always made him feel watched. His father's portrait hung above the fireplace, cold-eyed and unsmiling, as if still judging the son who had inherited everything except peace. Near the library doors stood Tasha Brooks in a gray cleaning uniform, hands clasped tight at her waist, trying not to shake. Her daughter Maya stood beside her with a worn blue backpack hanging from one shoulder. The cuff of Maya's hoodie was frayed. One shoelace was knotted twice because the plastic tip had broken off. They had not come for the trust deed. They had been brought upstairs because someone had accused Tasha of misplacing an antique wooden box from the archive room. Graham had said it calmly, almost kindly, the way powerful men said dangerous things when they knew. Poor people could not afford to challenge them. "Mrs. Brooks," he had told her, sliding a paper across a side table. "If you sign this acknowledgement, we may be able to keep this matter internal." Tasha's eyes had gone to the word liability. Maya saw it too. She had learned to notice words adults hope children would ignore. Nathaniel had barely looked at them at first. He was tired, irritated by delays, and Graham had assured him the housekeeping matter was unfortunate but routine. Vivian whispered, "Let Graham handle it, Nate. You have enough on your plate." Then Graham returned to the deed, reading aloud from his official translation, his voice smooth as marble. "Upon the marriage of the Whitmore heir, custodial influence may pass to the future wife, by vow and name." Nathaniel lowered his pen. Something in the sentence felt rehearsed, but not wrong enough to stop him. That was when Maya stepped forward. Not far, just one step beyond where the staff were supposed to stand. Her mother caught her sleeve, but Maya's eyes were fixed on the parchment. "That word does not mean wife, sir," she said. Graham slowly turned. "Excuse me?" Maya swallowed. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her backpack. "It means blood." The silence that followed was not empty. It had weight. Vivian's smile thinned. One of the experts near the shelves glanced at Graham, then quickly looked away. Nathaniel stared at the child for the first time, really stared, taking in the old hoodie, the steady eyes, the fear she was refusing to show. "Maya," Tasha whispered, almost pleading. "Baby, don't." But Maya did not move back. Graham placed his hand over the line she had looked at, covering the word with two pale fingers. "Mr. Whitmore," he said softly. "Children often repeat things they hear without understanding them." Nathaniel should have nodded. He should have signed. Instead, his gaze dropped to Graham's hand, and for one small, cold second, he wondered why a lawyer would hide a word from a child who supposedly could not read it. Graham's hand stayed on the parchment a second too long. Not long enough for anyone to accuse him of hiding something, but long enough for Maya to notice, and long enough for Nathaniel Whitmore to stop breathing in the easy, careless way powerful men breathed when the room still belonged to them. The fire clicked softly behind the brass screen. Rain slid down the tall windows in thin silver lines. Somewhere beyond the library walls, Far below in the service corridor, a washing machine thumped once and settled into its steady spin. A small, ordinary sound that made Tasha Brooks lower her eyes as if she had been reminded exactly where she was supposed to belong. Vivian smiled again, but the smile had changed. It became gentle, concerned, almost maternal. "Sweetheart," she said to Maya, stepping forward with the grace of someone crossing a ballroom instead of a crime scene. "Where did you hear a word like that?" Maya did not answer at once. Her thumb rubbed the torn seam of her backpack strap. "From my grandpa." "And was your grandfather a professor?" Vivian asked. Her voice was soft enough to pass for kindness. One of the experts near the shelves looked down at his shoes. Graham gave a quiet breath through his nose, almost a laugh. Tasha's fingers tightened around Maya's sleeve. "He cleaned floors," Maya said, "at the Maryland History Museum." Vivian's eyes flicked, not to Maya's face, but to her shoes. The broken lace, the scuffed rubber, the place where the sole had begun to peel away near the toe. "I see," Vivian said, and somehow those two words made the room feel colder. "Then perhaps he taught you something very special. But this is a legal matter, and Mr. Ellison has handled the Whitmore estate for decades." Graham inclined his head, accepting the compliment without looking pleased. That bothered Nathaniel more than if he had smiled. "Mrs. Brooks," Graham said, turning back toward Tasha, "this has already been an unfortunate evening. For your sake, I would advise you not to let your daughter make it worse." He slid the acknowledgement paper a few inches closer to Tasha. The movement was smooth, ordinary, almost boring. Paper moved across polished wood. A pen rolled gently beside it. Nothing about it looked cruel unless you understood what the paper could take from a woman who lived paycheck to paycheck. "Sign it," the cleaning supervisor muttered from near the doorway. "We can still say you cooperated." Maya looked at the paper, then at the deed, then at Graham's hand still resting too near the Latin line. "My mom didn't take your box," she said. Nathaniel's eyes shifted to her. "How do you know that?" Maya hesitated, then reached into her backpack. Tasha whispered, "Maya, no." But Maya pulled out a small blue notebook with tape along the spine and a rubber band holding it shut. The cover was soft from years of hands. On the front, in faded black marker, someone had written Elias Brooks. Graham's face did not change, but his left hand closed around the silver magnifying glass until the metal edge pressed into his palm. Nathaniel saw that too. "That's my grandpa's," Maya said. He wrote down words he saw at the museum. Not just Latin, Old Latin, Church Latin, some legal words too. Vivian gave a small, polite laugh. "That is a charming family keepsake." "It's not for sale," Maya said. The room went still again because no one had said anything about buying it. Graham finally lifted his hand from the deed. "No one is trying to buy your notebook, child." Maya looked at him with the steady sadness of someone who had already learned adults often denied things before they were accused. "A man called my mom this afternoon," she said. "He said if I found anything I didn't understand in my grandpa's things, he could take it off our hands. He said old paper makes trouble for poor families." Tasha went pale. "You didn't tell me that. You were crying in the laundry room," Maya said softly. The words landed harder than any accusation. Nathaniel turned slightly toward Graham. "Not fully. Just enough." "Who called her?" Graham's answer came too quickly. "I have no idea." On the side table, Vivian's phone vibrated once against the glass. She turned it over before the screen could light again. A normal little gesture, delicate as placing a napkin in her lap. But Maya had already seen the reflection in the dark window behind her. The message preview was only 4 words, but they made the notebook in Maya's hands feel suddenly heavier. "Does she have Elias?" Maya did not say the message out loud. She only looked at Vivian's phone, then looked away before any adult could accuse her of staring. But Nathaniel saw her eyes move. He saw the tiny change in her face, the way a child's fear sharpened into attention. "Maya," he said quietly, "what did you see?" Graham answered before she could. "Mr. Whitmore, with respect, this has gone far enough. We are now entertaining reflections in windows and museum scraps from a child's backpack. His voice was still controlled, but the warmth had drained from it. Maya held the blue notebook against her chest. I saw a name. Vivian's hand rested over her phone. Children misread things all the time. Not that name, Maya said. Nathaniel did not raise his voice. He did not look at Vivian yet. He only reached toward the side table and picked up the silver magnifying glass, turning it once between his fingers. What name? Maya swallowed. Elias. For the first time, the room did not simply go quiet. It seemed to listen. Tasha's lips parted. The cleaning supervisor near the doorway shifted his weight, suddenly interested in the pattern of the rug. Graham let out a soft, disappointed sigh, as if the entire problem was that poor people had too much imagination. Her grandfather's name is written on the cover, he said. Anyone in this room can see it. The window was behind Miss Vivian, Maya said. The notebook was facing me. The phone wasn't. Nathaniel looked at her then, longer than before. She was not crying. She was not begging. She was doing something much harder for a child in a rich man's house. She was keeping her voice steady while everyone waited for her to become small. Open the notebook, he said. Graham's head turned. Nathaniel. The use of his first name landed softly, like a hand placed over a door before it could open. Nathaniel did not look at him. Open it. Maya slipped off the rubber band. The pages lifted unevenly, some loose, some folded, many covered in careful handwriting. Latin words. Small drawings, museum label numbers, dates. In the margins, Elias Brooks had written notes in pencil so faint they looked like smoke. Maya turned to a page near the back and pointed. This is the symbol, she said. The 3 little cuts. Nathaniel leaned closer. The symbol had been copied several times, each one beside a phrase. Blood denied, name removed, private clause. Graham smiled, but it arrived a half-second late. That proves only that her grandfather copied old markings from somewhere. Museums are full of theatrical symbols. There's a number, Maya said. Under it. She touched the bottom of the page. Exhibit 14B. Whitmore Colonial Trust Fragment. Loaned by Ellison and Voss, 1998. Nathaniel's fingers stilled around the magnifying glass. Ellison and Voss loaned an exhibit to the Maryland History Museum? Graham's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Our firm has represented several families with historical holdings. Did the Whitmore family authorize that? Nathaniel asked. Your father did, Graham replied. Too fast again. Maya looked down at the page. My grandpa wrote the date too. October 6th. The grandfather clock ticked. Rain tapped the windows. Vivian lifted her phone from the table and slid it into her purse with a motion so graceful it almost looked meaningless. Almost. Nathaniel noticed anyway. What happened on October 6th? He asked. Maya turned another page. Tucked between 2 sheets was a thin rectangle of paper, creased until it was soft as cloth. She pulled it out carefully. It was not ancient. It was a photocopy receipt. The ink faded but readable. Ellison and Voss Archive Services. 2:13 a.m. Whitmore Legacy Trust. 1 reproduction. Restricted access. Tasha stared at it. Maya, where did you get that? From your uniform pocket, Maya whispered. The night you came home smelling like old paper and said they made you stay late. The cleaning supervisor's face changed. Not much. Just enough. Graham reached for the receipt. Maya stepped back before his hand touched it. Nathaniel saw that too. For the first time that evening, he put the pen down completely. Mr. Ellison, he said, his voice quiet enough to chill the room. Why was my family trust copied at 2:13 in the morning? Graham looked at the receipt, then at Maya, and when he smiled this time, there was no kindness left in it. Because, he said, some children do not understand what belongs to them and what does not. But Nathaniel's eyes had already dropped to the lower corner of the receipt, where the access code was not Graham's initials at all, but Vivian's. The initials at the bottom of the receipt were small, almost polite in their placement, the kind of detail meant to disappear beneath the larger words. VC authorized access. Nathaniel did not touch it at first. He only looked at Vivian's hand where it rested on her purse, the diamond still bright, her knuckles a little too still around the clasp. "Vivian," he said, and there was no accusation in his voice yet, only the shape of one forming. She looked wounded before anyone had hurt her. "Nate, I sit on the Foundation Archive Committee. You know that. Graham has asked me to authorize routine document preservation before." Graham nodded once, as if grateful for a sensible adult finally entering the room. "Exactly. This is an administrative matter being turned into theater." He turned toward the security guard near the door. "Mr. Hayes, please escort Mrs. Brooks and her daughter to the staff office." Gently. There is no need for embarrassment. The word gently made Tasha flinch more than if he had shouted. The guard stepped forward, not cruelly, not eagerly, just with the trained obedience of a man paid to make problems vanish before donors saw them. The cleaning supervisor moved beside him and lowered his voice. "Come on, Tasha. Don't make Mr. Whitmore watch this." Maya held the notebook tighter. The library suddenly seemed too large for her body. The ceiling rose 20 feet above her. Oil portraits stared down from gold frames. Every polished surface reflected how worn her hoodie looked, how small her shoes were against the Persian rug, how out of place her mother's gray uniform was beside Vivian's cream silk dress. One of the experts cleared his throat and said, "Perhaps it would be best to have the child's materials reviewed later by someone qualified." Later. Maya knew that word. Later was where poor people's questions went to die. Nathaniel watched Hayes stop a few feet from Maya. He saw the girl shift the receipt behind the blue notebook, not hiding it for herself, but protecting it the way someone protected the last dry match in a storm. Still, he did not yet understand all of it. He only understood that the room was trying to remove her faster than it was trying to answer her. "Maya," Nathaniel said quietly, "did anyone tell you to bring that notebook here?" "No, sir." "Did anyone tell you what to say about the deed?" "No, sir." Vivian stepped in before he could ask more. "Nate, she is a frightened child defending her mother. That is understandable. But frightened children connect things that may not belong together." She looked at Maya with soft pity sharpened at the edges. "Sweetheart, no one is blaming you for wanting to help." Maya's lips pressed together. Outside, the rain thickened against the windows, blurring the lights of the garden. Somewhere in the hall, a silver spoon touched porcelain, a tiny clean sound from a tray no one had asked for. Mrs. Hart, the elderly housekeeper, entered with tea, saw the guard near Maya, and stopped just inside the door. Her eyes moved to the deed, then to the notebook, then to Graham's face. For half a second, something old and afraid crossed her expression. Graham saw it too. "Mrs. Hart," he said smoothly, "leave the tray and go." The old woman lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir." Maya watched her hand tremble as she set down the tray. One teaspoon rolled slightly against the saucer, pointing toward the deed like a compass needle. The room seemed to breathe again, convinced the interruption had passed. Graham stepped toward Nathaniel and lowered his voice, but not enough. "Sign tonight, and I will personally arrange for the Brooks matter to be dismissed." Quietly. No police. No ruined employment record. Everyone protected. It was a generous offer on its surface. Clean. Practical. Merciful. Nathaniel almost hated how reasonable it sounded. Maya looked at her mother, then at the acknowledgement paper waiting on the side table, then back at Graham. "My mom doesn't need quiet," she said. "She needs true." No one moved. Even Hayes looked away. Graham's smile hardened. Truth requires expertise. Maya opened the blue notebook with both hands and placed it on the table before anyone could stop her. "Then why?" she asked, pointing to the copied symbol in Elias Brooks's careful handwriting. "Did you just call this a preservation mark when your own receipt calls it restricted access?" Graham's eyes dropped to the page, and for the first time all night he made a mistake. He said, "Because that clause was never meant to be read aloud." The sentence left Graham's mouth so quietly that, For a moment, no one seemed certain they had heard it, because that clause was never meant to be read aloud. The fire settled behind the screen with a soft collapse of ash. Nathaniel's face did not change, but his right hand moved away from the pen as if the gold barrel had become warm. "What clause?" he asked. Graham blinked once. That was all. Then he recovered, smoothing his tie with 2 fingers. "A historical clause," he said. "Obsolete, ceremonial, irrelevant to modern administration." Maya did not argue. She reached into the back pocket of the blue notebook and pulled out something folded inside a clear plastic sandwich bag. Not old parchment. Not museum paper. A thin white receipt, bent down the middle. The ink faded in places but still dark enough to read under the lamp. She had protected it from rain, from backpack crumbs, from adults who liked to make evidence disappear by calling it trash. "This was in my mom's uniform," Maya said. "Not in her purse. Not at home. In the pocket of the shirt they made her turn in." Tasha looked at the bag as if it had become heavier than any accusation. "I thought it was just a laundry slip," she whispered. Maya shook her head. "Grandpa taught me numbers matter when people lie." Nathaniel looked at the receipt through the plastic. Ellison and Voss Archive Services. 2:13 a.m. Whitmore Legacy Trust. Restricted access reproduction. Beneath that, in smaller print, was the same code Vivian's initials had authorized, and beside it, a second line that had been nearly rubbed away. Storage room B. Wooden case removed for imaging. Nathaniel's eyes stopped there. Wooden case. Removed. He looked toward the side table where the acknowledgement waited for Tasha's signature, accusing her of misplacing that very case. No one spoke for several seconds. The only sound was the rain pushing against the glass and the faint rattle of china on the tea tray where Mrs. Hart had left it. Nathaniel remembered his father's funeral reception in this same room 15 years earlier. Graham had stood beside him then, younger, solemn, useful. He had said, "Your father trusted continuity above all else. Let the old systems protect you." Nathaniel had believed him because grief made a man grateful for anyone who could explain what came next. Now, looking at the receipt in a poor child's plastic bag, he realized old systems did not only protect. Sometimes they buried. Vivian stepped closer, her perfume reaching him before her voice did. "Nate," she said softly, "please be careful. Anyone could have placed that receipt in her mother's pocket." It was a reasonable sentence, perfectly shaped, but Nathaniel heard the strange thing inside it. She had not asked what receipt. She had not asked what it said. She had defended against it before he explained it. Maya heard it too. Her eyes moved to Vivian, then back to Nathaniel. "She knew it was bad before you told her," Maya said. Vivian's expression tightened. "That is not what happened." Graham turned toward the guard. "This child is now making accusations against Miss Cross. Remove her notebook and the receipt until counsel can review them." Hayes took one step forward and stopped when Nathaniel lifted a hand. Not high, not dramatic, just enough. "No one touches what she brought." The room changed again. Not safely, not completely, but the balance shifted by an inch. Nathaniel took out his phone and photographed the receipt through the plastic, then the page in Elias Brooks's notebook, then the Latin line under Graham's unwilling eyes. He sent the images to someone named Rebecca Shaw with only 4 words. "Preserve these off-site now." Vivian watched the message leave. Graham watched Nathaniel's thumb press send. Maya watched them both, still holding the receipt like a candle in a room full of expensive dark. Then Nathaniel looked at Vivian's purse, where her phone had disappeared, and asked almost gently, "Why did you authorize access to a wooden case you just told me was routine paperwork?" The question was gentle enough that Vivian almost smiled from habit, but it did not reach her eyes. "Because Graham asked me to," she said. "Because you trust him, and I trusted him for you." It was an answer shaped like loyalty, and for years Nathaniel might have accepted it. Tonight, he only nodded once, as if placing the sentence on a shelf where he could examine it later. "Of course," he said. Then he turned to Hayes. "Ask Mrs. Hart to remain in the hall. No one leaves the East Wing until I say otherwise." Graham's eyebrows lifted. Nathaniel, that sounds unnecessarily dramatic. It's my house, Nathaniel replied, still quiet. Indulge me. The calmness unsettled the room more than anger would have. Graham could have fought rage. Vivian could have soothed suspicion. But neither of them seemed to know what to do with a man who had stopped defending himself and started observing. Nathaniel picked up his phone again and called Rebecca Shaw. He did not put her on speaker. Rebecca, he said, walking toward the window where rain silvered the black glass. I need an independent preservation hold on the Whitmore Legacy Trust documents. Everything. Deeds, scans, access logs, archive camera, staff schedules, visitor badges. He paused, listening. No, not through Ellison and Voss. Through your office. Quietly. Graham's head turned only a fraction at that. Not enough to look afraid. Enough to hear the word quietly. On the far side of the room, Maya stood beside her mother, still holding the notebook and the receipt in the plastic bag. Tasha whispered, Baby, you shouldn't have had to do this. Maya looked down at the old handwriting on the blue pages. I don't want his money, she whispered back. I just don't want them to say you stole. Nathaniel heard it. He did not turn, but something in his face changed in the reflection of the window. A child had stepped into a room built for inheritance, and the only thing she asked to protect was her mother's name. For a moment, the mansion felt strangely ordinary. Somewhere below them, the washing machine in the service corridor clicked into its rinse cycle. From a distant kitchen, a television murmured. Through a late-night weather report, rain hit the windows harder, then softened. The sounds belonged to another world, the world of people who kept rich houses running after the rich had stopped noticing them. Then Nathaniel's phone vibrated. Rebecca had already sent one attachment. Security archive status. East Wing. 1:58 a.m. to 2:21 a.m. Missing footage. Not overwritten. Manually removed. Nathaniel read the line twice. Manually removed. He lifted his eyes to Graham, who was now speaking to Vivian in a low voice near the fireplace. Vivian's chin stayed high. Graham's mouth barely moved. They looked like two people discussing dinner seating, not the disappearance of 23 minutes from a billionaire's archive room. Nathaniel slid the phone into his jacket pocket before either of them saw the screen. He turned to the cleaning supervisor. What time did Mrs. Brooks leave the mansion that night? The man startled. I'd have to check payroll. Check memory. The supervisor swallowed. Around 1:30, maybe. She had to catch the last bus. Tasha shook her head quickly. No, sir. They kept me until after 2. Mr. Delaney said there was a spill near the archive hall. Nathaniel looked at Delaney. Delaney's face went flat. I don't recall that. Maya reached into her backpack again and pulled out a bus transfer slip, folded so many times it had almost split at the crease. Mom missed the 1:40 bus, she said. She came home on the 2:35. I kept it because she was crying and forgot it in her coat. Nathaniel took the slip without touching her fingers. Careful, respectful. The timestamp sat there in black ink. 2:36 a.m., Route 67, downtown Newport. He remembered Graham telling him the incident had happened after housekeeping left. He remembered Vivian saying the case must have been misplaced by staff before the archive review. He remembered not asking more because the explanation had been convenient. Nathaniel looked across his own library, past the portraits, past the deed, past the woman he planned to marry and the lawyer who had inherited his trust before he had learned to question it. And with the bus slip in his hand, he understood that he had not simply overlooked Tasha Brooks. He had believed the people who needed her blamed. Nathaniel did not accuse anyone. He did not raise the bus slip like a weapon or demand an explanation from Graham across the room. He simply folded it once, slowly, and placed it beside Maya's plastic-covered receipt on the walnut table. Mr. Delaney, he said to the cleaning supervisor, you said you do not recall keeping Mrs. Brooks late. Delaney's throat moved. That's correct, sir. Then you won't mind confirming the archive spill. Of course not. The answer came too fast, but Nathaniel only nodded. He turned to Maya. You said your mother came home crying. Maya looked at Tasha first, asking permission without words. Tasha's eyes were wet, but she gave the smallest nod. She had soap on her sleeve, Maya said. Not regular soap. The kind from this house. It smells like lemons and metal. Vivian exhaled softly, almost a laugh. Many cleaning products smell similar. And she had dust on one knee, Maya added. Like she had been kneeling. But Mom doesn't kneel to mop. Her back hurts. Tasha looked down, embarrassed by the intimacy of being known so carefully by her child in front of people who had never needed to notice pain to survive. Nathaniel did not look away from Maya. Anything else? Maya hesitated. Her key card was in the wrong pocket. Delaney frowned. That doesn't mean anything. It means she didn't use it last, Maya said. Mom always puts it in her left pocket after she clocks out because her bus card goes in the right one. That night, the work card was in the right pocket. Somebody gave it back to her wrong. The room stilled. It was such a small detail, almost childish, almost nothing. And because of that, it felt impossible to prepare for. Nathaniel turned toward Hayes. Bring the staff keycard reader from security. The portable one. Graham's hand paused on the back of a chair. Nathaniel, this is not a courtroom. No, Nathaniel said. It's my library, and I am trying to understand why everyone in it keeps explaining before I ask. Hayes left. The door clicked shut behind him. Vivian's phone vibrated inside her purse. Once, then again. No one moved toward it. The sound was delicate and obscene in the quiet room. A tiny trapped insect beating against silk. Maya looked at the purse, then at Graham. Graham looked at Vivian without turning his head fully. It was barely a glance, but Nathaniel saw it pass between them. He had spent decades reading boardrooms. He knew when people were negotiating without speaking. Hayes returned with a black handheld reader and a small laptop. A green camera light on the laptop blinked as it connected to the internal security system. File loading appeared on the screen. 10%. 27. 42. Nathaniel stood beside the table, hands relaxed at his sides, more still than he had been all night. Mr. Delaney, he said, please repeat what you told me. Mrs. Brooks left around 1:30. Delaney looked at Graham. Graham did not rescue him. Around then, yes. And you did not call her back to the archive hall. No, sir. And her card was not used after that. Delaney swallowed. I wouldn't know without checking. The file finished loading. Hayes read the first line, then looked up. Mrs. Brooks's card was used at 2:04 a.m. East Archive entrance. Tasha shook her head. I was in the laundry room then. Mr. Delaney told me to wait there. Nathaniel looked at Delaney. You just said you did not call her back. Delaney's face flushed. I may have been mistaken about the time. Maya reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a small thing no one expected. A bent paper tag from a dry cleaning bundle, the kind pinned to staff uniforms. This was stuck to Mom's sleeve when she got home, she said. It says archive drapes, not laundry. Hayes took it, checked the printed route code, then glanced at the laptop. Archive drapes were logged by supervisor override. Not Mrs. Brooks. Nathaniel finally turned to Graham. Whose override? The laptop made a soft chime. A new line appeared. Supervisor override approved by G. Graham stared at the screen, and for the first time all night, the room saw him understand that the little girl in the frayed hoodie was no longer standing between her mother and power alone. The initials G sat on the laptop screen with a calmness that made the room colder. Graham did not reach for the computer. He did not deny it immediately. He only adjusted his cuff, a precise little movement, as if cloth could restore order faster than truth could damage it. Supervisor override, he said, does not mean personal involvement. My credentials are used by authorized staff during archive preservation. Nathaniel watched him the way he might watch a crack widen across glass. Then we will see who used them. Graham's eyes flicked toward the laptop. The camera footage is missing. 23 minutes are missing, Nathaniel said. Not everything. Hayes clicked into the security archive while everyone stood very still. A progress bar crawled across the screen. Vivian's phone vibrated again inside her purse, but this time she did not touch it. Tasha had one arm around Maya's shoulders, not pulling her away now, only holding her as if her child had become the one solid thing left in the room. Maya stared at the laptop. "There's another camera," she said. Hayes paused. "No, sweetheart. The East Archive has one ceiling camera." Maya shook her head. "Not that one." She pointed toward the tall window behind Nathaniel's desk. "The garden camera. The one by the porch light. It looks at the rain statue, but when the glass is dark, it sees inside a little." No one spoke. Nathaniel turned slowly toward the window. He had passed that camera 1,000 times. It was meant to catch trespassers near the east garden door, not secrets inside his library. "Pull the garden camera," he said. Graham's face changed so subtly that only someone already watching would have noticed. His mouth lost its softness. Hayes searched the system. The room waited. From somewhere downstairs came the faint hum of the late-night television in the kitchen. A woman's voice reporting coastal flooding, ordinary weather moving through an extraordinary silence. Then the footage opened. At first it showed only rain, black hedges, and the pale stone statue beyond the glass. Hayes fast-forwarded. The timestamp reached 2:05 a.m. A reflected shape moved inside the archive room window. Blurred, distorted by rain, but visible. A man in a dark suit entered carrying a wooden case. Behind him came Delaney, holding a staff key card between two fingers. Then Vivian appeared in the reflection, not in her cream dress from tonight, but in a dark coat, her hair pinned up, one hand holding her phone near her ear. Hayes slowed the video. Graham stepped into view. He opened the wooden case. He removed the deed. Vivian pointed to a page. Delaney looked toward the hallway, nervous, then placed Tasha's key card on the table. Maya's small voice broke the silence. "That's my mom's card." No one corrected her. The footage continued. Graham laid a sheet beside the deed, a modern page with the same heading but cleaner margins. He did not destroy the old paper. He did something colder. He placed the altered translation on top of it, aligned the corners, and photographed them together so the false words looked official. Vivian leaned over his shoulder. The garden camera caught her reflection speaking, but not the sound. Hayes clicked another file. "There is audio from the East Hall motion sensor," he said quietly. Graham finally moved. "Do not play that." Nathaniel did not look at him. "Play it." The audio crackled, rain and static first, then Vivian's voice, low and controlled. "Once Nate signs after the wedding, the marital access clause becomes practical control." Graham answered, "Only if the blood clause stays buried." Delaney whispered, "And the cleaner?" Graham said, "She signs liability. Poor women sign what frightens them." Tasha made a sound so small it barely existed. Maya's hand found hers. Nathaniel did not move. His face drained of color so completely that for a moment he looked less like the owner of the house than another portrait trapped inside it. He stared at the screen, at the lie happening under his roof, under his name, beside the woman he had planned to marry and the lawyer he had trusted since his father's death. His mouth opened once, but no words came. The footage kept playing to a room that no longer needed convincing. Then Maya stepped forward and placed the blue notebook beside the laptop, open to Elias Brooks's careful copy of the same blood clause. "My grandpa didn't bury it," she said. Nathaniel looked at the notebook, then at Tasha, then at Maya's frayed sleeve and the receipt in the plastic bag. Slowly, he took the fountain pen he had nearly used to sign away the trust, laid it flat across the false translation, and said in a voice so calm it made Vivian close her eyes, "Call my attorney." "Not the family one." Nathaniel's attorney arrived before midnight in a navy raincoat, carrying no briefcase, only a sealed tablet and the expression of a woman who had spent 20 years learning which rich men were frightened and which ones were finally ready to tell the truth. Rebecca Shaw did not shake Graham's hand. She did not greet Vivian. She stood beside the walnut table, watched the footage twice, listened to the audio once, then looked at Nathaniel and said, "Do not sign anything. Do not let anyone leave with a device. And do not speak to Mr. Ellison without independent counsel present." Graham tried to object with the thin dignity of a man still searching for the door he usually escaped through. Rebecca only turned to Hayes. Preserve the phones, laptops, archive logs, and access cards. Chain of custody starts now. Vivian's engagement ring caught the light when she slowly removed it and placed it on the table, not as surrender, but as performance. Nate, she whispered. This has been twisted. Nathaniel looked at the ring, then at the false translation under his fountain pen. No, he said. It was translated. By morning, the mansion no longer felt like a private kingdom. Felt like a witness. The board of the Whitmore Legacy Trust convened in the same library where Tasha Brooks had been asked to sign away her dignity. This time, Tasha sat at the table. Not near the door. Not beside the staff entrance. At the table, with Rebecca Shaw on one side and Maya on the other, the blue notebook resting between them. Graham Ellison was suspended before noon, removed from all Whitmore accounts, and referred to the State Bar and the District Attorney for falsifying legal records, misusing access credentials, and coercing an employee into accepting liability. Delaney was terminated and placed under investigation by the contractor that supplied housekeeping staff. Vivian lost her board, access, her foundation seat, and the wedding that had been quietly built around control. No one dragged them out. No one screamed. That made it worse. Their names were read into the minutes in calm voices, under portraits that had watched generations of quieter harm go uncorrected. Then came the harder part, the part money alone could not fix. Nathaniel stood before Tasha and tried to apologize, but the first attempt sounded like a statement prepared by lawyers. He stopped himself. He looked at her uniform, at the tired bend in her shoulders, at the daughter who had protected evidence in a sandwich bag because no one had protected them. Mrs. Brooks, he said softer now, I let my house treat you like you were disposable because it was easier than asking why. I am sorry. Tasha did not forgive him quickly. She did not have to. She only nodded once and said, My daughter should not have had to be braver than every adult in this room. Nathaniel lowered his eyes. No, he said. She shouldn't have. In the weeks that followed, the legal review confirmed what Elias Brooks had copied by hand years earlier. Clara Whitmore Brooks was restored to the family record, not in a footnote, not in a private archive, but in the official Whitmore genealogy displayed at the Historical Foundation. The trust was frozen until an independent court could review the blood clause, and a protective fund was created for Tasha and Maya, managed by their own attorney, not Nathaniel's. Tasha received back pay, damages, health coverage, and a new position with full benefits at the museum where her father had once cleaned floors. Maya received a scholarship in Elias Brooks's name, but Nathaniel made sure the first check did not go to a fancy school brochure or a publicity photo. It paid rent on a clean apartment with working heat, a safe lock, and a kitchen where Tasha no longer cried over envelopes at 2 in the morning. Months later, Nathaniel visited the Maryland History Museum after closing. No cameras. No board members. No Vivian. No Graham. In a small gallery, a new frame hung under soft white light. Inside it was not the trust deed. It was a copy of one page from Elias Brooks's blue notebook, placed beside a photograph of Clara Whitmore Brooks that had finally been cleaned, restored, and given her full name. Maya stood in front of it wearing a new coat, dark green, warm but not flashy. She held her mother's hand. Nathaniel stood a few feet behind them, careful not to crowd the moment. Your grandfather should have had his name here a long time ago, he said. Maya looked at the frame, then at the polished floor beneath it. He used to mop this hallway, she said. He told me nobody looks down unless they drop something. Nathaniel swallowed, unable to answer. Maya turned to him, her voice quiet and steady. Maybe that's why he found what everybody else missed. Outside, the museum lights glowed against the cold Baltimore night, and for once, the old words behind the glass did not belong only to the powerful, because the little girl they tried to silence had read them aloud until the truth won the room.